Hi, my name is Raymond Levinsky. I recently applied for the guitar tech position at Guitar Center of Detroit in Roseville, Michigan. I'm making this video to show a little bit of what I'm able to do with electric guitars. Setup and wiring are probably my specialties. Today I'm going to be working on my buddy's Squier vintage modified 1970s jazz bass. He needs a setup for flat wound strings, and it does have a little bit of a connection problem inside. He thinks it's his input jack, so we're going to take a look at that, open her up, and see what's going on. So let's get into it. On the table here, you're going to see some of the tools that I generally use for at-home setups. In the kit to the left, you're going to see some screwdriver bits, an extra spring for my Stratocaster, wire cutters, electrical tape, a tube of solder, a nut tightener, a bag of extra wire, Allen wrenches, and a cleaning rag. That'll probably be mostly what I'll be using today. Next to that, you're going to see a pack of 55 to 105 Fender flat wound strings. We'll be putting those on the bass. Next to that, you're going to see my soldering iron kit. It has several different bits, but the one that's on there currently is going to be the one I'll probably be using most today. Next to that, you're going to see some of the cleaning supplies that I like to use on my guitars. The one in front is Gurlitt's Guitar Honey, generally used for darker wood fretboards like rosewood, but I do tend to use it on some of my natural dark wood bodies. I have a couple acoustics that have mahogany, and I like to use that on there. It makes the wood grain pop very nicely. Behind that is Gibson guitar pump polish, generally used for stuff that have a gloss finish, acoustics especially. And then behind that is Elegant music instrument polish, which is a little bit more of a throwaway polish that I like to use on some of the gloss finished lighter wood fingerboards, kind of like what we're going to be using today. Next to that, you're going to see a small Honeytone amp, which I'll be using to check connection, wiring, and grounding in the input jack on this bass. And then behind that, you'll see a sponge submerged in water, which is used to clean off my soldering iron as we go. Okay, so while waiting for my soldering iron to heat up, I took off the strings on the guitar and I took off the potentiometer plate, and as soon as I took it off, the input jack fell right out. So it looks like that's probably what the issue is here. One thing I did notice too is the ground wire. If you look, it only connects to one pot, which is interesting to me. I did look up the wiring diagram and saw that that's just kind of how they did the Vintage Modified series. So what I'm going to do now, grab some of the parts that I took off here. So I'm going to actually tighten the input jack back in, just so it's in place there. Do that real quick here. Grab my little nut adjuster. Get that at a good angle so we can do some soldering work here. Just give it a little bit of a hand tighten, nothing too tight. Don't want to strip anything. Okay. So what we'll be doing is soldering this wire to that little connector right there. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna grab our solder. Now I know some people like to use the little hole that's in these tubes, but I like to just pull the whole thing of solder out. All right, first thing we're gonna do is tin the wire. Heat it up a little bit here. go. All right, put the soldering iron down for a second, and then I'm gonna try to just bend this just a little bit so I can get it connected to that connector right there. Right. Here we go. All right, then we're gonna heat that up and get it nice and connected there. Try to make sure all the exposed wire is covered. Here we go. All right, and that should be good, but what we're gonna do to make sure before I close it all up is we're gonna take that little amp and we're gonna plug that into the input jack and make sure that it's working properly. All right, and what we'll do for that is we'll just turn the amp on a little bit so we're getting some response. All right, it looks like everything is working nice and groovy. Hold on. What happened here? Uh-oh. Huh. All right, so next thing we're gonna do is test connection after soldering everything up. We have all of the potentiometers turned all the way up to 10, plugged into our little honeytone amp here, and we're just gonna tap the pickups, make sure they're getting some feedback. All right, that one's good. That one's a little weak, but it is getting some feedback. So what we might do here, I think what I'm gonna do is set her up, and if for some reason this one isn't acting right, we'll take this back off and see what's going on. But it is a bridge or a neck pickup, so it might just, you know, have a lower frequency to it, sort of. All right, so let's get this thing screwed back together then. Okay, now first things first. Personally, I like to wipe it down before I start spraying stuff on, just so stuff isn't moving around too much. So I'll go ahead and do that real quick. And by stuff moving around too much, I mean the dust just moving around the body. So I like to try to get all that stuff out of here first, and then we'll go ahead and polish. Actually, I might not even need too much polish on this metal, which is nice to not have to do too much work on stuff. I might even be able to just hand polish stuff here. Yeah, it looks like it's turning out pretty all right. A little bit of scratches from the pot covers, but that's to be expected. You can tell he had some fun playing this bass a little bit. Clean up the pick guard here. It attracts a lot of dust because it's black. Clean around the pickups a little. And this is just a very quick, broad cleanup of the front of it. We will be putting some polish on there to make it shine and get any of the grime on there that's a little tougher to come off. But for now, we're just gonna worry about getting any of the easy to come off stuff with a rag. A lot of that dust and stuff in the fretboard here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Got Lando Calrissian right here. I'm gonna have to be careful around those stickers to make sure they don't come off. All right, this base has a very nice gloss finish on the fingerboard, which is actually going to make it a lot easier to clean. I have one of these bases as well. Being that I am left-handed, us lefties kind of get skimped out a little bit when it comes to guitars and the way they're made and everything. And the lefty version of this actually does not have a gloss finish on it. The wood grain looks great on it. Personally, I like it better than the wood grain on this, which this looks fine, but yeah, it does not have a gloss finish on it, so we did kind of get skimped there a little bit in a way. Clean everything up a little bit here. We also got Lando on the headstock, apparently, so we'll be careful to not ruin those stickers at all. Got a couple things I can do here to make sure those don't go nowhere. Okay, it's pretty clean for the most part right here. So what we're gonna do next is I'm gonna get a Q-tip, and we're just gonna kind of get in there in those little crevices, maybe around the pickups, around the frets and everything. Oh, that reminds me. Check the frets on this boy. They're a little dirty, but they're, for being in Michigan, they're not sharp at all. I don't think they're gonna have to be dressed today, which is good. And we'll check and see, but the fretboard cleaner might actually take off. It's literally just right there too, which is interesting. The rest of the frets are pretty clean. I know he said he played this one quite a bit. I've got a little bit right there too. I know he said he played this one quite a bit, but it more looks like it's just dust. So, make our job a little bit easier today. All right. Okay, so we're looking at the bridge here. I did open up the Elegant music instrument polish. But what we're gonna do is just clean it up a little bit, dry clean it first. Let's get around those edges that the rag couldn't really get into. And it's looking pretty grimy in there. So what I'm gonna do after this is I'm going to dip a Q-tip into the instrument polish, and that'll kind of help pick up a lot of the stuff that's not so easy to get to, because there's a lot of grime in here, and it is coming up a little bit, but that'll kind of help pick up a lot of the other stuff we can't really get up. So get that in there. It's really out by where the eyelets are here on the inside, where it seems to have been built up the most. And this is usually what I do if I don't have rubbing alcohol laying around. You could just use that. You want to get something that has more alcohol than water, probably about good like 80%, because then it'll just evaporate and it won't rust. And keep that nice chrome polish on there. All right, so go ahead and dip that in the polish a little bit. Like I said, I generally use rubbing alcohol for stuff like this. Unfortunately, we ran out. We got some dead animals in jars that we like to keep preserved. So, had to refill on that a little bit, so currently we are out of rubbing alcohol. But this will work just fine. And it's not so much that it's going to be hard to get off either. And it is picking up a lot of that grime that's on there. And if you don't use too much, I find you can actually get a nice polish on any chrome parts. So we got that kind of coated here. All right, and then what I like to do to kind of get that stuff off is I like to take that rag again. I'll grab 2 Q-tips and I'll kind of just wrap it around the Q-tips, so it kind of gives a sturdiness to it. You can just shove it right under 2 of the saddles. This one here is moving around a bit, which is good. We're getting in there. Get in front of them a little bit. And the saddles didn't get too dirty from that whole excursion there, so that's good. I'll do it from the same from the other side. All right, nice and pretty. Beautiful. Fresh off the shelf. All right. And since those Q-tips are still good, what we'll do next is just try to get along some of the other hardware a little bit, maybe a little harder to get into. Just make sure it's nice and clean before we get in there with the polish. Oh yeah, especially right there. These pickups are a little nasty around them, which is normal. It is always fun having to do stuff like this for other people's instruments. You know, instead of only worrying about your grime, your natural grime and stuff on here, you got to worry about other people's. If I were any more of a clean freak, it would be an issue. But I digress. Okay, bridge pickup is nice and clean. Do the neck pickup now. And like I said, we're just going around there with the Q-tip here. Getting all that grime out of there. Dust and grime that builds up over time. You know, your fingers naturally excrete oil, unfortunately, so a lot of that grime process is just that. So, all right. That neck. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is use some polish on a rag. All right, we'll clear off a few things on the table here. We have some room to work. Screw the cap back on that bad boy. frame a little bit more. Okay, so what we'll do next, just take our rag. I like to fold it up. Now generally if I'm using Grillit's Fret Honey, what I'll do is I'll just spray it right on the body and then just rub it all in. Give it a couple hours, sometimes a day or two. With my mahogany bodies, I like to put that stuff on one side at a time. And then I'll, if it's a nice sunny day, I'll put it right in the window. Kind of let it get some sun to it, some age on the, not age, but a little bit of light on it. And I think it makes the wood grain pop up a little bit more. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Alright, and we'll just start trying to get around these stickers for the most part here. You want to make sure those aren't going to be an issue. They are a little dirty, but that's no problem. Get around all that stuff here. Oh, something fell. Ah, nothing important. Good. And then I do use this on the pick guard a little bit too. Just get like more of those fingerprints and smudges and stuff off of it. Even use it on the metal a little bit. And then so it doesn't dry on there, just get a dry piece of the cloth. Just rub it all out. Same thing with the pick guard. Just get a dry section of the cloth. Just get all that dust and leftover grime, smudges, get all that out of there. Make it look nice and pretty. Always want it to look brand new. Well, as new as you can. There's always dings and dents in every guitar. I'd be worried if the guitar didn't have dings and dents in it. There are some scratches in the pick guard, but that's what the pick guard's there for, so. Can always change out a pick guard. Alright, it's looking pretty nice. Get a little more spray on the rag. Then we're going to wipe down the neck. Don't need that anymore. Get a better angle on there. There we go. Now, because this fretboard has a gloss finish, you don't gotta worry a whole lot about going with the wood grain, which is nice. Generally, if there is no gloss on it, at least from what I've been told, you're gonna wanna go into the frets with the wood grain, which does kind of make it a little challenging getting in between the frets, like deep in there, I guess. But like I said, because this one has gloss finish on it. It's not something we really have to worry about right now. Put a little more on there. Try to clean up those frets a little bit, make them look nice. Huh. All right. And I like to go in sections too. So I'll do probably at least up to here. I would go up to the 12th fret, but because he's got the stickers, those are gonna take some special attention just to make sure they don't come off. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to zoom in, or well, first wipe those off, wipe off that section at least. Dry part of the rag and just lightly getting all that polish off. Okay, so I'm gonna cut and then I'm gonna be zooming into this to kind of show how I would probably attack that situation here. So, okay, so off camera, I did flip it around, clean the back of it as well, and I managed to clean those stickers pretty well. I'm pretty happy about that. Like I said, want to make sure nothing happens to those, especially if it's not your guitar, you know? So, okay, so the next step is going to be the overall setup for flat wound strings. Now, my friend did have round wound strings on there to begin with. So we're gonna have to do quite a setup on here. What I like to do when I'm setting up like this is I will tighten the truss rod first, maybe about a quarter turn on it. So we'll do a quarter turn on the truss rod. There we go. Okay. Grab his pack of strings. Now, before I actually set this up 100%, I want to check and make sure that his nut is going to fit the circumference of the strings. Generally, I find that if the thickest string is going to fit without any sort of slack on it or moving around too much, should be okay with the rest of them, but we will go ahead and check the rest of them just to make sure. So I'll take the thicker part of the string and just kind of lay it in there. Oh yeah, no, that's gonna be good. Actually, that's near perfect. Cool. Okay, so that would probably mean that the rest of them will be okay, but like I said, I am gonna double check and just make sure, just in case something does need a little bit of work. Do the same with the A string. And to see that one's gonna need a little bit of work. All right, so I'm gonna pause for right now, and then I'll change my camera angle and kind of get a better feel of that. Actually, never mind. What I'll do is I'll just flip the guitar around like a pro. All right. Now it doesn't need to be done too much on the A string, or filed, I mean. It doesn't need to be filed too much, but before I get into filing, I want to check the rest of the grooves just to make sure. So here's our D string. D string could use a little bit. Let's see, it's kind of wants to stick in there. So D string will need it a little. All right, and then we have our G string. We'll see how that one fits. Yeah, it's gonna need it too. So pretty much all of them except the E string. So go ahead and do that. Grab my trusty files. And what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna go too hard with it. It is just plastic, it's, you know, Squier plastic too. So what I'm really gonna do is I'm just gonna try to get those lips kinda, that seems to be like what's sticking, why the string is sticking in there a little bit. So I'm just gonna try to open that up a little bit. Gotta love being left-handed. Get a different file here. Right. I'm just going to be trying to open it up just a littlest bit so that the strings sit nicely in there. Don't want to do too much damage on it or anything like that. We're going to do it just enough. Right, and then make sure there's no burrs in there. They are flat wound strings, so I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue, but it is always good to make sure. Oh, it even looks like there's a little bit of a burr on that E string, so we'll clean that up a little bit too. It's still there. And this is probably the most tedious process, is just trying to clean up the nut a little bit. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, completely redo the nut or anything like that. I'm just trying to open it up just enough so that the strings sit comfortably in there without doing anything too detrimental to it. You know, we're just doing a basic flat wound setup right now, so it's not like it needs to be too opened up or anything like that. We're just opening up, trying to get those lips off of there. It's never fun when you break a string by the nut. Like I said, these are flat wound, so I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, but for professionalism's sake, we'll go ahead and do that for them. But it is always good to make sure there's no burrs. Plus, you know, telephone wire for bass strings, don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. Okay, give it a quick feel. A little bit still on that A string pocket. All right, and we'll check all the ones that we were worried about here. I might as well just check them all. So we got our E string. Perfect as ever. Right? Yep. Perfect as ever. Then our A string. Oh yeah, very nice. No more sticking. Good level on it. D string. Oh yeah, perfect. No more lip stuck on there or anything. So, and then we'll do the E string or G string, and then we'll start stringing her up. Oh yeah, awesome. All right, cool. Okay, so during the breaking video, I did clean up the underside, the backside of the guitar, just polished it a little bit. It didn't seem too grimy, which is a good thing. So we're kind of just moving along here. I did already restring it, and I did tune it. Now, I forgot to mention earlier that my friend wants his bass tuned to drop C, so that would be detuning with the open C. So at the very top, I don't know if it's in the shot or not, but there is a tuner up top. It's a little snark right there. So it is tuned. So what we're going to do now is just double check the intonation. So everything should be relatively in tune here. Fresh strings as it goes. Sometimes won't hold a tune for a second, but it's okay. Okay, so it is in tune. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check intonation, and we will be doing that by hitting the open note and then hitting the 12th fret. So we'll start with the G string since it's closest to me. A little sharp on that end. Alright, so the G string is a little sharp. Come on. Okay. D string is a little sharp as well. It's to be expected. There is going to be a little bit of adjustment just because they are flat wounds. I am happy to see that it's not too out of tune. A string is looking good. and the E string is looking good. So really all we're gonna have to do is adjust the D and the G string. And since they're a little sharp, what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen those two strings a bit. Just a bit, so we can get some work on the bridge down here. Okay, so what we'll do first, better angle on that bridge there. So what we're going to do first is we're going to actually move this inward towards the pickup. Just ever so slightly. We'll do the same with the D string. Again, just ever so slightly. They were pretty close. So, all right, we'll tune it up again real quick. See how that looks. Alright, tune up the rest of it. Alright, and then we'll double check the intonation real quick. Perfect. Hold on a second. Perfect. And we're just checking the other strings because the neck did move around a little bit. All right. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to make sure that there is no buzzing along the fretboard. And I always find it's best to do that holding the guitar properly. Ah, flat wounds. So easy on the fingers. Got no dead notes so far. All right, so we got no buzzing frets. So before I put the potentiometer knobs on again, what I want to do is plug it in one more time into the Honeytone amp. just so we can make sure that all the connections are working properly. Sounds good with strings on it. So as you can see, did plug it into the amp there. Like I said, just because the neck pickup sounded a little weird to me earlier, so I just want to be sure before, you know. Now, the amp is not the best amp, so bear with me here. Make sure that overdrive is turned all the way down. Okay, so we are having a little bit of a connection problem here. So we'll see what's up with that real quick. All right, so I'm gonna open this back up and we'll see what's going on. So there you have it. Set up on a vintage modified Squier jazz bass, round wound flat wound strings. Luckily didn't have to do a whole lot of work on the intonation or the string height or anything. It seems to be doing pretty well so far. Input jack is now resoldered. Did have a little bit of trouble with that neck pickup at the end there, but I think it's going to be okay. Did adjust the height and it is seeming to work a little bit better now. We will see though. My friend, I know he doesn't have any spare pickups, so he might have to live with that for right now. I did check all the wiring on the inside of it and everything looks okay. I'm not seeing any breaks or anything like that. It almost seems like the tone knob down here is kind of what controls between the two pickups, which is strange to me. I've always seen them, you know, volume, tone. So it's a little strange to see that the tone knob has that kind of effect between pickups. But yeah, there you have it. I hope you guys found this a little bit impressive, and I hope you reconsider me for your guitar tech position at Guitar Center Detroit. Thank you for your time. This is going to be attached to an email for Bobby with some other pictures of projects I've worked on, some of the guitars I've helped build from scratch, and some of the modifications I've made to a personal guitar of mine as well. And like I said, I hope you guys found that impressive, and I hope you reconsider hiring me as the guitar tech. So thank you for your time.